Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. We're coming towards the end here. This time, we're talking about nutrition as it relates through our lifespan, which is actually a pretty interesting topic. So we're going to start all the way from pregnancy, how nutrition is important for a pregnant woman, all the way through infancy, toddler, childbirth, school age, young adult, middle-aged adult, elderly, the whole shebang. So this is a logical discussion to have after we've gone through all the macronutrients, all the micronutrients. So here we go. There is quite a bit of information, but I think you know me by now, hopefully. You are responsible for what it is I'm going to talk about. So I will be pointing out specific things. If I don't point it out, or if I say specifically you don't have to know it, then you don't have to know it. There is a lot of information in your textbook, anywhere really, about fetal development. You don't need to know any of that. We only have 1 week to cover this material, so we have to cut some corners. So even though it's interesting to read about how the fetus gets nutrition in the womb, you do not need to know it for any quizzes or exams. But I am going to point out a couple things, and I think a lot of this you might already know. The placenta is the covering, the little pouch that holds the fetus. You see covering here, you might want to use the word pouch, the placenta. It keeps the baby and its nutrients where it needs to be, serves as a boundary, separating the mother from the growing fetus. And of course, the umbilical cord is what connects the mother to the fetus. So if I do this in pink, there's going to be, I guess red's kind of hard to see. Let's do black. There's going to be a little cord, right, that connects the fetus and the placenta to the mother. And of course, that umbilical cord is how the mother's nutrients get into the fetus, because the mother is indeed having to eat for two. So you make sure you review these two. There's so much more detail. Here's another picture. We get a good look at the umbilical cord, right? That whole thing is the umbilical cord. And then we can also see the placenta. Placenta's in green. Holds everything in. Oh dear. Smiley face for me. It's kind of like my public service announcement to show pictures of childbirth. For a lot of reasons, we should appreciate our mothers, and the men out there, I think, need to see what really happens. Okay, so here we go. Nutrition is really important. Not only is it important through our lifetime, but even especially during pregnancy, before pregnancy, during, and after. Right? So it's really important. The mother is basically sharing her bloodstream with the developing fetus. So she's got to be really mindful about what she brings in, because it's going to be shared with that developing fetus. You can see I've put in red here what you need to know. So we can see here, even the father's nutrition can play a role. You know, if a couple or whomever is looking to impregnate someone, right? Or if a couple is looking to get pregnant together, the father should be considering all these things. I mean, not only because it's good for his well-being overall, but because it's going to make the best environment for pregnancy to happen. The father should have a well-balanced diet. There are particular things that are associated with healthy sperm production. We have some minerals and some antioxidants. Just ignore that. There has been other things that we've talked that have been studied, like drinks high in caffeine and sugar like Mountain Dew might decrease the sperm count. Smoking, alcohol, drug abuse, not so great for the sperm. but the father can play a role. And for the mother, even before she conceives, can actually play a role. Here are some statistics that show that to be true. For example, obese women who become pregnant are at higher risk for a troubled pregnancy. And on the other hand, underweight women can also have some troubled pregnancies upcoming. So not only an overall diet that's healthy, but an overall body composition that's healthy is going to make for the best environment for a growing fetus. Okay, so we are going to talk about some general nutrition guidelines first. And that's going to relate to pretty much all throughout pregnancy. And then we're going to get into the specific guidelines for each of the 3 trimesters during pregnancy. Throughout pregnancy, in most cases, pregnant women require a well-balanced diet, as they should be eating anyway, but even more important now. If you think about a growing fetus, this time is so important. So if we consider the seriousness of how important it is to have a nurturing environment for that growing fetus when so many important things are being laid down, did you know what are the first 2 body systems in a fetus to develop? Cardiovascular and nervous. So some of the first things that happen are that nervous system. The fetus is laying down these nerve tracks of what's going to become the brain. It's laying down the basis of what's going to become the cardiovascular system. This is really important, folks. So it seems only prudent that the mother's bringing in a well-balanced diet. In most cases, in most areas of the trimester, a pregnant woman will require more calories. She will need more protein and increased levels of certain vitamins and minerals. I think a lot of this is common sense, which shouldn't make it too hard to digest. So those are the general guidelines. Let's get more specific about these vitamins and minerals. This is one of my favorite cartoons. All right, so let's talk about folate. Folate is a vitamin and mineral that's really important. A vitamin, that's really important. Why? Well, it prevents neural problems, and that's all you really need to know. More specifically, there's this thing called the neural tube. It's kind of a precursor of what's going to become the nervous system. But not having enough folate can lead to nervous system problems with the nervous system developing. How should a woman get more folate who's pregnant? It may be supplements, it may be fortified foods, it may be a balanced diet. I think that is pretty self-explanatory. If a woman can get it through her overall diet, that's great, but it's not uncommon to get a supplement here to help. And in terms of the function, we remind ourselves that folate plays a role with DNA synthesis, and that's going to play a role, in this case, with developing that nervous system. All right, there's a lot of information here, so just make sure that you are focusing on what it is I'm talking about. Here's that neural tube. This is what it should look like. If this process is interrupted, it can lead to a problem in the nervous system development, specifically spina bifida, which can be very life-altering. B12, vitamin B12. So we had folate that's important for pregnancy for women, and also B12. B12 also plays a role in making DNA and forming our red blood cells. When the female body is helping to develop a new fetus, it's really important that we have healthy DNA. And that's why we mentioned the folate. We want to make sure that we're expressing that DNA correctly. And that's also a function that's shared by vitamin B12. And also it's really important for the mother and the fetus to have healthy red blood cells. That's going to provide the oxygen for all these chemical reactions to occur, to allow the body to grow. Vitamin B12, a pregnant woman is more likely to get enough of through regular diet, but that isn't always the case, especially a vegetarian pregnant woman, for example. So supplementation, if needed, is certainly something that's okay. Iron. Well, iron, we already know what iron does as a mineral. It helps to form hemoglobin, which is what transports oxygen. Usually a supplement is needed. You don't have to know the exact amount. Stick to the mineral or vitamin and its function. So here we have a mineral, iron, and it's important because it helps to form hemoglobin, which is what transports oxygen on red blood cells. Boom, boom, boom. And then zinc, right? Zinc, healthy immune system. You don't need to know about supplementation, but the function of zinc and why it's so important for a pregnant woman and her developing fetus, healthy immune system. We want to make sure that we keep the body of the woman, pregnant woman, and the fetus as free of bacteria and viruses as possible. So we need a healthy immune system. And calcium. Make sure you review the functions of calcium. We don't necessarily need more calcium, but it's important to make sure that we get enough. So again, stick to the vitamin and mineral, and then its function for pregnant women. So some of them can be met through a diet. Others must be obtained through supplementation, particularly folate and iron. I'm not going to ask you this, but I just want to say it's possible to meet some of these through diet pretty easily if you just put a little effort towards it. But most often, a pregnant woman is going to take some prenatal vitamins. She'll take them before she gets pregnant and also while she's pregnant. And this is an all-in-one. And this is going to contain a lot of the things that we just talked about. Look, zinc, iron, calcium, B12, folate. We just talked about all of those. So this prenatal vitamin is going to contain all those and some more of the others. I'm not going to ask you this specifically, but just saying that in most instances, a woman who wants to get pregnant and who is pregnant will take a vitamin supplement. An all-in-one is the easiest way to do it. Okay, now let's get to the specifics of the first, second, and third trimester. Okay, in the first trimester, little to no calorie intake. So you might increase your calories a little bit. You might increase your calories by 200 to 300 calories per day. That's it. It really depends who you are. There is a fallacy that in this first trimester, women need to be eating their face off, and that's not true. The woman, if she's eating a well-balanced diet, is likely to be getting in enough of almost everything, right? But it's not a bad idea to up your intake a little bit, but not a whole lot. And in the first trimester, we need more folate, iron, and zinc, so more of some of those vitamins and minerals we just talked about. Some other notes, I'm not going to ask you about them. It depends on the woman. Some women actually don't get as hungry when they're pregnant, so it's kind of important that they force themselves to eat, even just to get in our regular calories. It's important to be safe with food, not get any extra bacteria in you. Sometimes women have their sense of taste is a little bit different, so their cravings are different. Something that you may never have liked before, all of a sudden you crave, or vice versa. Okay. It is in the first trimester that a pregnant woman is most likely to have morning sickness. So just know that we usually have this morning sickness in the first trimester. It's interesting, I think there's a lot still to learn about this, but it's probably true that the crazy fluctuations in hormones play a role in this. In the second trimester, now we're going to need to increase our calorie needs. And you don't have to know this number, right? For most women, I'm saying somewhere around 300, 400 kilocalories more per day. You don't need to know that, but if you want a ballpark, of course, it depends on the woman's size to begin with. She will need more carbs, more protein. More carbs and more protein. If you look at the healthy weight gain, it should be a little less than 1 pound a week. So again, we don't want to see this eating your face off like crazy. Not that if a pregnant woman increases her diet by more than 400 calories, it's not going to kill the baby. It's not the worst thing. So for some women, they have to really work hard to make sure they get enough. Other women are so hungry that it's easy to get enough. Some women have a hard time losing the excess weight after they give birth. So it might be important for them to make sure that they're eating the appropriate increase in calories and not too much, and have an appropriate gain in weight each week. But a lot of this is also genetic. In the third trimester, they're going to need even more calories and still more carbs and more protein. We might edge up a little bit on the healthy weight gain, but, about 1 pound a week is about where we should be. Okay. Here are some things that pregnant women need to avoid. In particular, there's particular fish that need to be avoided. You don't need to know the specific types of fish. Just know that some fish need to be avoided, particularly those that have the mercury in it. Caffeine should be limited. I'm not going to ask you the exact number of what's safe, but caffeine should be limited. I mean, it's always best to get rid of it altogether, but limited at least. And of course, the obvious things, my friends, we should avoid: cigarettes, alcohol, drugs. They could be really bad. Okay, I think I made my point. You can read through some of the information on fetal alcohol syndrome. I am not going to ask you about it. You can read about it if you want, but I'm not going to ask you. Here are some symptoms. All right. Some other things that may not be as obvious. Pregnant women need to be careful with botanical supplements. So it's important that if you take supplements aside from those vitamins and minerals, these are mostly herbal things. Maybe there's a woman who becomes pregnant who has always taken like ginseng or some sort of more Eastern medicine type herb. Some of those can have consequences that we may not like. So do your research. A pregnant woman should also avoid raw or undercooked meat. So this means no sushi with fish in it, no really rare steak. Okay. Here are some examples of a recommended amount of total weight gain. I'm not going to ask you this because everyone's a little different, but people are interested sometimes in a ballpark. So there we have it. Just a guideline, but it's there if you're interested. This chart is better because it does go by BMI. Again, I'm not going to ask you this, but it goes through what a reasonably healthy weight gain looks like. What about exercise in pregnancy? I mean, a lot of us, me included, are exercisers. When is appropriate to exercise? When is it maybe not appropriate to exercise? There can be benefits to a woman who's pregnant exercising. However, it should be more low impact. I don't think that's any crazy bit. We don't need to be doing deadlifts with 300 pounds when you're pregnant. A little bit too much of an impact. Here are some do's. I think a lot of this is common sense. Probably want to, if you're a more serious exerciser, you probably want to limit things a little bit. This is not the time to train for your PR in a marathon, certainly not. But doing some exercise just to keep the blood flowing, just to be healthy, just to kind of sweat a little bit, those should be the guidelines, not getting your personal best. Here are some things that you should not do. If you're not feeling well, don't exercise. Don't be too vigorous. I wouldn't be doing any CrossFit huge lifts when you're pregnant. You can read about some of the health complications that are possible. A pregnant woman could get gestational diabetes. You can see it's not in red, so I'm not going to ask you about it. If you're wondering, this is just when a woman gets diabetes when she's pregnant, when she didn't have it before. But I would like to talk about preeclampsia. This is high blood pressure during pregnancy. And it usually happens in a woman who doesn't have high blood pressure prior to that. But due to some undue stress during the pregnancy, the woman's blood pressure goes up. And it could be really dangerous. I mean, it could happen in someone that had hypertension before, but not always. And it can have really serious effects that, you may not think, well, people all across the world have high blood pressure. Well, now we have blood supply to a fetus to worry about. So it should absolutely be taken seriously. This is a little off-color cartoon for you. So it's not only important that we consider nutrition before pregnancy and during pregnancy, but we also want to consider nutrition after, particularly if that woman who just gave birth is breastfeeding. There are some absolute benefits to breastfeeding. There's psychological benefits. There are financial benefits. Many people argue that there are benefits that are physiological, that it's actually better for the baby. So there are some known benefits out there. That doesn't mean that formula is bad. So I don't want to give you that impression. If a woman is comfortable, is able to breastfeed, it's a great option. You get that bonding with the baby that you don't get with the bottle feeding from formula. But if a woman is not capable or able or doesn't fit in their lifestyle, it's their choice, formula can be fine also. Here are some other potential benefits. Read through those of breastfeeding. There could be some negatives. Some mothers are just not able to produce enough milk. Some mothers may have their own medical condition which precludes them from breastfeeding. Sometimes it's just a time commitment that mother's not able to do if she's going back to work. And it can be painful and difficult. So even though there are some potential benefits to breastfeeding, it's not the be-all, end-all. It certainly is up to the woman to decide. Because formula can be just as good. Formula can provide a very similar nutrient value. So nothing wrong with that. All right. Have you ever wondered about breast milk? Well, we're going to talk about it. So did you know, at first, for the first few days after birth, the breast milk doesn't look like what you maybe think it does? Within the first few days after birth, it's something called colostrum, and it's a little bit more yellowish. After that, we get to the breast milk that we are more familiar with. This is going to be the breast milk that is high in the fat lactose, the sugar lactose and fat and B vitamins. It's actually low in protein. For this developing baby, it needs sugar, vitamins, and fat. It's going to be burning up those sugars and fat as energy because it's got to build a whole new body. If a woman chooses to breastfeed, it is best to do all breastfeeding and not go between breastfeeding and formula. After about the first 6 months, breast milk may not be enough. So after 6 months, that's the realm when we'll introduce solid foods to the baby. Most people will. So it's absolutely okay to continue breastfeeding, but it would be very beneficial to include some other solid foods with that breastfeeding. Okay, when a mother is breastfeeding, here are some things that she needs to bring in more of. Have a look over those. Basically a well-balanced diet, folks. If you look at this diagram on the right, wherever you see purple, that's what she needs more of. So look how the purple goes really far out here. Okay. As I've been saying, formula can be just as healthy an alternative. Cow's milk is not going to do the job. Cow's milk is too high in protein, too low in fat. It's not as easily absorbed. That's why you got to get the formula. The formulas these days are as close as possible as they can make it to real breast milk. It is regulated by the FDA. Oftentimes it's made from cow's milk, but it's gone through a processing process to make sure that it's closer to the composition of real breast milk. Okay. Whew. So what we'll do is that was a big chunk of this chapter. Whew. So let's take a break. I'm going to end this first part of the video, and when we come back, we'll do the second part of the video, which is going through the rest of life. All right, see you next time, folks.